But we're going to jump into our first brag and steal for the afternoon and just sit back and enjoy. So I believe our first one, go for it. Yep.
I think that's me.
Yep, that's you.
Let me make sure that I can actually share. We had some issues off before we started here. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes. Yep, you're
okay.
great.
Well, I probably just jinxed myself then. I'm sure it'll implode at some point. Hi, everyone. My name is Brielle Stark. I know many of your faces and lots of your names. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about something called FOQUSAphasia, which the names listed here are part of our steering committee. And there are also a lot of people I've seen on the call who are active in our working group. So FOQUSAphasia was created at the Clinical Aphasiology Conference, wow, going on about 2.5 years ago at this point. And it is really a working group to facilitate networking around discourse in aphasia. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. So there's been a load of amazing work over the years in discourse, and we are really standing on the shoulders of those individuals who have worked a great deal on this. And we're now really just interested in bringing together people who are interested in improving the evidence base and working together now to create some really tangible change in this area. So some of the issues that led us to forming this working group, the first one was that no reporting standards currently exist. And what I mean by reporting standards are just best practices. Many of you are familiar with Sarah Wallace's initiative for the Roma consensus, just getting research outcomes that people will consistently use and then share across aphasia-related research. And that's really to improve our ability to do things like meta-analyses, draw big conclusions, and replicate findings. And because we don't have really a best practice or even kind of a minimum set of things that might help us to improve what we're finding and replicate what we're finding in discourse, we're kind of hitting a bit of an issue in terms of making discourse a really reliable and valid outcome. Because of that also, you've got some issues in establishing some psychometric properties for discourse measures. By the way, when I say measures, it can be anything from linguistic, so number of words, up through more functional, so things like main concept analysis, story grammar. So we really need to work on that and establish those properties so that they're more clinically useful. And the second to last, I think, thing that we were focusing on really by creating a network is just getting a lot of people to work together and increase our ability to get bigger sample sizes and really have the power to investigate statistically some of these major patterns that we're starting to see in small samples, but that would be really ideal to see in larger samples for discourse. And the last thing here is that at the moment, as I mentioned at the beginning, discourse is used all the time. Plenty of surveys have shown that, including one we recently did, but it's not really used or hasn't been included as a core outcome for some of the reasons some of the reasons discussed above. There are others. So what we decided to do was create a little working group. This is a really intimidating figure, don't be alarmed. But we wanted to create a working group that was going to interface with stakeholders. So go out and talk to people with aphasia, their caregivers, also the people that are in their clinical teams. What do they want out of things related to discourse? What do they see as being valuable? And we wanted to also engage researchers in the field to really take a leadership role in, creating studies that they've always wanted to do and kind of making those more national and international, right? Really increasing our networks. And we also wanted to put on some big events and interactive things that were free that would increase the knowledge and the use of discourse in aphasia. So that's kind of where we are right now. Membership is totally free. It's definitely just a networking group. You can join us on FOQUSAphasia.com. You can add yourself as a member. I think we just hit 53 added profiles on there, and our Slack channel where we generally communicate and put out anything that's happening in terms of research and otherwise has almost 90 members at this point. So we're definitely increasing. Our overall goals are just to create a network of interested and knowledgeable parties, address feasible and meaningful problems, and then, many of us come from a research setting, so really making sure we can improve evidence and the way that we're reporting things from a research setting before we move on to a clinical setting. These timings are rehearsed, so that's why it's just kind of going on its own. Some projects we're currently working on. We are finishing up an eDelphi survey to address one of those problems I mentioned earlier, which is just a minimum standard for best practices of what can we report to help us to make sure we've got a real strong basis for replication. Going into round 3, which is the final round. Thank you to those who have participated who are on this call. I see some of you. Another one is we just resubmitted an international survey paper looking at some barriers and some other thought processes related to what we can change to improve discourse analysis internationally. We also host a lot of free workshops. We've had about 5 or 6 this year. I saw Sarah Grace Dalton on here. She and Dr. Jessica Richardson also came and did a 2-series main concept workshop recently, which was really well attended. And then some of us are working on those psychometric property issues, looking at test-retest data from my own study, but also from data that's been collected and kept in Aphasia Bank. So I hopefully didn't go over my time, but our general goals and why I'm presenting here is that we'd love to have any of you involved. There's a variety of ways to be involved. Please contact me or anyone on the steering committee. We'd love to have you do a talk. Anything related to discourse. I know we're called spoken discourse, but we're super interested in multimodal things as well. We range in interest from people who study only monologue to people who study conversation, for instance. And we also range in expertise from vascular aphasia to primary progressive aphasia to cognitive communicative disorders as well. So that is my spiel. So I will go ahead and, wow, my timings went well. Go ahead and open it up to any questions.
I have a question. I work in a lot of different areas of research in the sense of social cohesion that deals with conversational competency. And this deals with the whole range of humanity. We focus on aphasia because it's an ideal case study that can isolate specifically the conversational competency through the language, because of course it's a lack of language, not of imagination, if you will. So, but we're looking at it for populations of isolation and also deployment and so forth. So how much do you work with other different areas of discipline research, but also methods and practices, et cetera, that deals with all range of function and impairment?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think that's a really important thing that we tried to acknowledge early on is study of discourse is highly interdisciplinary. We have a lot of linguists who join us, quite a few. So my background is actually in psychology and neuroscience. I'm not a trained clinician, so I come from a background of learning about language through there. And we have a few other individuals. I know we have some neurologists who have joined us in the past, and we're working on kind of increasing our purview or span, also into some computational linguistics, because I think they're doing some really interesting stuff with natural language processing that would help automate some of the things related to discourse that are really time consuming and are major barriers to use. So I'm hoping that people feel like they're invited to the networking group. Yeah. And I think a great way to do that would be to have some of the talks focused on people from outside of the kind of immediate discipline of communication sciences. And if you're interested in doing one.
Yeah, I'm working on developing perceptual computing so they can automate the capture and analysis of social cognitive behavior, including language and gestures and eye and et cetera. And that's giving a lot of data, but it's measure without meaning. And so we need to work with people who understand that. My second question is, I'm dealing with a lot of neuroscientists, cognitive scientists in the area of imagination, language, and story. And one person who just finished a book called Story Intelligence talks about story being the language of imagination. But story is a language that's more attuned to the brain.
Yeah.
How much are you working with story?
That's a good segue because I see Katie Strong on here, so I'm gonna throw her under the bus. No, I'm just kidding. But she is bragging, stealing later. But we do work with Story a lot, and I think Story has a unique way of letting us into some psychosocial processes. So I'll wait for her to talk a little bit. But I think those interested in Story are definitely welcome, and we try and have a really holistic view of discourse.
Thank you, Brielle, and to the FOCUS team. We're going to keep moving along, educating students in LPAA in virtual context. So thank you.
Hello, let me get this set up here. I'm gonna need to do it from here because
If you try in the bottom right, Robin, the projector icon. You were there, yep, left. A little bit left, and you can get it, or we
usually
can
I
go
do
that
it from
way.
the top, but the top is blocked from the share screen.
Oh,
Yeah,
well then,
there, got
there
it.
we go.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Robin Pollens, and I'm presenting on behalf of my colleagues Suma, Devanga, Marie Koss-Ryan, and Elizabeth Nagler. And we are all clinical supervisors in the Aphasia Communication Enhancement Program, or ACE program, at Western Michigan University. What prompted us to create this presentation? The impetus was last September. And in September, all of a sudden, we will be doing virtual therapy with individuals with aphasia. And the students who were joining us, the 10 students who were joining us, it was their first semester in grad school. Few of them had any adult therapy experience. None of them had met anybody with aphasia. They had not yet had an aphasia class, and they certainly didn't know life participation. My other computer just went there. And so we were thinking, how are we going to orient these students so that they would still have the kind of framework and values of our program, which include life participation approach, relationship-centered care, WHO-ICF, AFRAM, and collaborative goal setting. What we usually do pre-pandemic is we have something called opening day, and we invite all the clients and family and all the students together, and we do activities, kind of the experiential learning that Jerry and Tom were talking about yesterday in their poster session, but that wasn't going to happen. So what I'm going to present to you is what we did in this orientation session. Hold on. So that they would be ready to start therapy. The first thing we did was we gave them one article to read ahead of time. And I chose the one by Carolina Ulloa and Gloria Jean Wallace. It was a sharing my story, a first person account. And with this, when we opened up our orientation, we were able to ask questions such as, what was this person's language like? How did having aphasia impact their life? And what did this SLP do to have the goals fit the kinds of things that were important? There goes 30 seconds of my presentation that were important to this person. And that worked well, is having a framework to having the kind of discussions we like to have, but with a shared understanding. The second thing we needed to do was to have these students learn how to communicate with people with aphasia. So we used the videos from Aphasia Institute and Aphasia Access. Oh dear. Leave it off the hook. To show them examples of how to communicate with people with aphasia. And we chose examples of people with varying language types. The other thing we did in this area, in the beginning when we introduced ourselves, we asked the students, if you weren't here right now, what would you be doing for fun? And we had them each say what they'd be doing for fun, but they couldn't use any verbal communication. So they either gestured or drew something out. And we had one other person on the Zoom guess what they were doing. So it was right away to have some experience of using multimodality communication as a receiver and an expressor, and how that kind of thing can prompt some humor, some laughter, some conversation, and so on. Again, pre-pandemic, we usually have a simulation we do where people are getting the experience of communicating as if they had aphasia, or being a partner and having discussion, but that wasn't going to happen in the Zoom that we needed to do. Number three, the third thing we do is we thought, well, the students would probably think, okay, I'm learning all this, but what am I going to do? How's this going to work for me with the client? And so each of the 4 supervisors gave a very brief snapshot of one client. And I'll tell you basically what I said. The student met the client, and the client said, well, I'm going to start babysitting twice a week for my granddaughter. I wish I could talk better. And so the content of therapy was using a aphasia script model of things that the client wanted to say to their granddaughter, such like things like, do you want Munchables or SpaghettiOs? After we gave these type of examples, then we needed to give them a little bit more practically ready for the first session. Number 4 and number 5, I have separate slides for that I'm going to show you in a minute. But I just want to tell you, this semester with the 10 students in our practicum also used these 5 things when they started out. And I asked them this week, looking back, which of these were helpful? And the ones that they said the most were number 4 and number 5. So let me show you what that is. We gave them a handout, a worksheet, and talked about it so that they knew when they're meeting a person with aphasia and having this interview session, what are they listening for? They're listening certainly for their communication impairment. And these are examples of something somebody might have, but they're also listening for their conversational skill, their activity. Do they initiate topics, things like that? They're listening for or asking about their participation. What are the things they like to do? What are they involved with? They might be finding out environmental facilitators or barriers and having some discussion about goals. So these things might come up in this initial session, or they might ask for them. So having this kind of model, it kind of set their framework for what they're going to be thinking about when they meet with their clients. The second thing we did was we have our students always write a SOAP note after each session. And SOAP is S is subjective, O objective, A assessment, P is plan. But this time in the O objective on the paper, I added 3 words: communication, participation, and goals. So they knew that when they would document after the session, they were going to see if there were things that they could say objectively about their communication, participation, and goals. I didn't give any examples here about communication because you know what that is. But looking at client number 2, the student wrote that she enjoys listening to books and she watches Jeopardy twice a day, at least now during the pandemic. And the goals, the client wanted to learn to talk better, and she wanted to work on reading the answers in Jeopardy. So we found that all 10 of the students that went through this process with us, they did write their SOAP note. They did include in their first SOAP note information about communication, participation, and goal setting. So we felt like we had met at least some of our goal of having them start the semester with this type of an orientation. So I have some of the references on the slide of what we used. The bottom one, the Ulao and Wallace, there's the link to the article I mentioned. I also stuck in the link to the Sandra Glister Robin Pollens 2007 article. Certainly since then, the content of what we do in ACE has certainly changed, but the basic philosophy of what we're doing really hasn't changed in many ways. So I stuck that on there too. And you'll see on the top, I wrote, send your ideas. And I really mean that. How are you orienting your students for life participation? I'd be glad to hear email about it or in the chat later. And also certainly if you have any questions. So I'm gonna stop my share.
Got a couple of minutes for questions, maybe one question.
And I'll say, I never talk that fast usually. I hope you were able to follow.
It was great. Sorry, Tom Sather kept calling, but we got it under control.
Okay, is there a question You want me to?
Anyone with a question hanging out there? And remember, you can always follow up in the discussion forum too if you have a question that comes up along the way, and Robin will respond just as the other Bragg and Steel presenters as well.
Yes.
Okay, seeing no questions, terrific information,
Okay.
love it. And looking forward to the next one, which is aphasia. This is our world. Let's roll.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brielle Kosch. I am the clinical program manager at Lingraphica, and I'm currently managing virtual connections. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Katie Strong, who's an assistant professor at Central Michigan University. And this past fall, we started this project called Aphasia, This is Our World, where we were working to train students on how to become coaches to support people with aphasia virtually in storytelling. So this project was run through Virtual Connections. For those of you who don't know what Virtual Connections is, it is an online support group for families living with aphasia, both within the United States and internationally. And if you'd like to learn more about it, Carol Dell Richards and I are actually doing another Bragg and Steel tomorrow on that. Put that little plug in there. This project, though, focused on having people with aphasia develop their stories with graduate students trained on how to help them do that in the virtual environment. And we thought this would be an excellent opportunity to educate the community about aphasia and spread awareness, but also just to highlight the hard work and success that these people with aphasia have done to get to where they are in their aphasia journey. So a little bit about the project and how it worked. Let me get my videos out of here so I can see the screen. We had 6 storytellers. Those were the individuals with aphasia. We had 6 SLP graduate student coaches from Central Michigan University. We had 2 SLP coaches, which were Dr. Strong and myself. And then we had 1 experienced storyteller who acted as a mentor, not just for the students and the storytellers, but for Katie and I as well. And you guys most likely know him. His name is Avi Golden, and he has a lot of experience with storytelling and public speaking about aphasia. We started with some student training, which I'll talk about on the next slide. We had 8 weeks of 60-minute coaching sessions, and that was on Zoom. We'd go into breakout rooms, and the students were paired with one of the storytellers, and they would work one-on-one together in those small breakout rooms. There was homework between sessions for both the storytellers and the coaches. And then the main goal at the end of the program was for them to present their stories. First to the group that did the project. So that was like about 14 of us. And then they all went on to present at a virtual connection session, most of which had 60 or more people with aphasia, caregivers, professionals attending. And then actually in the coming weeks, they're each presenting their stories again to the Lingraphica staff as lunch and learns. So part of this project was not only to help them create their story, but also to help them make connections and give them a platform to be able to present their stories. We really wanted to focus on helping these individuals develop their public speaking skills, be able to provide them again with a platform to share their stories and spread awareness. And we also just thought it would be a unique learning experience for the students, especially in the virtual world we were thrown into this past year. The training that we did with the students focused a lot on the connection between narrative and identity, which of course is Katie's strong point, and as well as some more supported communication techniques, especially in the virtual realm, and also using technology to support storytelling. We did have 1 participant who uses a Lingraphica communication device and used the touch talk to help support telling his story. The members, the storytellers were, as I said, people with aphasia. You can see all their beautiful faces there across the top. We have Chase up there with his dog Lake. You guys all met Chase earlier with Team Yoga. We have Tom, Brooke, Sherry, Matthew, and Wade. They're all active members in Virtual Connections. They all expressed interest to KDRI at some point that they were interested in public speaking and getting out and sharing their story and spreading awareness. And they were all highly motivated to do so. So instead of Katie and I telling you about our experience and what we thought about our project, we have a short video here from the graduate students sharing with you what they got out of this project and working with these individuals with aphasia. Just give me a thumbs up that my sound is working when it goes.
I had the privilege and honor of working with Tom, who wanted to write down a story and share it with individuals who were experiencing the same highs and lows of the aphasia journey as he did. This experience was eye-opening. It really enhanced my understanding of working with clients with aphasia and the importance of storytelling. I also had the added benefit of finding a new friend in town.
I had the pleasure of being paired up with Sherry, where together we co-constructed her story. During this time, I was able to learn from Sherry what a textbook could not teach me, and that's the perspective of one stroke from a stroke survivor and a person with aphasia. This was a new perspective for me, and I am grateful to Sherry for teaching me that.
I got to see individuals support one another in some of their most vulnerable times by sharing their aphasia journey. I also got to witness them then present their journey in a bigger scope to more individuals to support and advocate for one another. And that is just something I really can't put words into on how much it has changed me as a person.
I had an amazing experience as a student clinician and worked with an inspiring individual named Chase. Through my experiences with Chase and the others in the group, I was able to learn so much about aphasia and these individuals themselves. Every night I left our meetings inspired by these individuals and by their stories. Working with Chase, I learned more about how to help individuals with aphasia tell their stories in a way they wanted to be heard by the world. Aphasia, This Is Our World inspires me to be a better clinician and is an experience that I will keep with me throughout my career.
Thank you. That is the end of our presentation.
Terrific. I see we did have one question that was partially answered in the chat, but I'll ask it anyway for a little bit of a follow-up from Dr. Strong. Great to see this in the virtual format with students. Just to confirm, this was a virtual adaptation of Dr. Strong's My Story intervention. Is that correct?
It was a little bit of that. You know, we didn't necessarily do the before my life, my stroke. It was really whatever they wanted to share. So each of them probably had a little element of that, but it was it was kind of an adaptation of My Story intervention. So thanks, Marion.
Terrific. And another question, can we hear the stories anywhere?
That's a good question. So we do have them all recorded. We just haven't figured out how we're going to share them yet. So, but yes, they will be available at some point, I would say. Right,
I will
Katie?
say, yeah, I will say too that like I've invited a few of the speakers to our local Lansing area aphasia support group. And so our members were able to hear their stories also. So if you're interested in, you know, maybe booking someone, we might be able to help facilitate something along those lines too.
Yeah, and that was actually really our goal, was to not only help them build these stories, but get them out there so that they could start sharing their stories. So if you are interested, like Katie said, we will help you set that up.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like there's a couple of takers already in terms of booking that virtual hour of Zoom, right? Terrific.
Exactly.
Well, we do have a minute. If anyone has a question, you can unmute your mic and jump in. If not, we can continue on in the discussion forum as well. And I'm sure they're both Brielle and Katie are happy to jump in on that.
Katie, just one question. How did you select the people that were telling their stories, or was this an optional group, or how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, Bree and I did that collectively together. We were kind of just keeping an eye on some of the virtual connections members who we felt like we knew were doing some advocacy work or interested in sharing their story. And so then it was a by invitation only. We selected individuals who we thought would enjoy this experience and also have shown some commitment because we're looking for, work between sessions. So, but I'll tell you, the word is kind of out on virtual connections anyway, because as these storytellers are sharing their stories, others are like, I want to too. So, so it's pretty cool.
That is fabulous. Thank you both so much. And next up, we have something I hear quite often. Listen up.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
We can, yes.
Great. Slide. Okay. Hi, I just want to start by saying I am so honored to be here. This has been a fantastic week. I also want to thank Stephanie Sigelkow, who is my co-author and also was my partner the first time we did a Facebook Live event. So this all started at the Adler Aphasia Center in Maywood with our advocacy group, which has been an ongoing group that's run for many, many years. And many of the same members sign up semester after semester to be in this group. Some of you might know the group because we've created the aphasia car magnets, and once every couple of years or so, we put out a mailing to get people to order them. That's one of the jobs of the advocacy group. On almost a weekly basis, when we were in person, we would have visitors, medical personnel, residents, medical students, nursing students, come in and actually sit with the members. And the members had an opportunity to share their stories and to give communication tips and strategies. So it was discussed about 2 years ago or so, why don't we do a Facebook Live for June to raise awareness for aphasia? Now, at that time, we had not been living for a whole year virtually as we have this past year. So my first response was, what exactly is a Facebook Live? But I did learn pretty quickly. So the room was set up. There was a TV monitor behind me, which you can't see in the picture. And that allowed all the members to see what it looked like on Facebook and as comments were coming in. I had an iPad in front of me, and again, that allowed me to see what it looked like on Facebook. We left a space between the tables so that the photographer could go through, walk through, and shine the camera on each person's face as they were participating. This past year, of course, last June, we did it again, but this time we had to switch to Zoom. So this gave us the opportunity to invite members from our other centers as well in West Orange and Toms River, and not just those who were in the advocacy group. In fact, there were members on who I never even met in person. We just corresponded virtually. And so you can see here what it looked like. It was the Zoom call, but it was on Facebook Live. At that point, our members had already been used to Zoom since about the middle of March, about 2.5 months, so they were kind of used to the format. So you need really two people. One was Steph, she's the Facebook administrator, and she was the photographer. So we picked a date in advance and we promoted the date of the event. We did a test run beforehand, which I'll talk about at the very end, and she was the photographer for the day. As you realize from being on Zoom, sometimes it's hard to know what's in the chat. And so she would be able to cue me as to what questions and comments were coming in. When we did it live, it was just comments from Facebook. When we did it on Zoom, it was comments from Facebook and comments from Zoom. And then afterwards, since the event was recorded, she could promote showing the video again on Facebook. My job was to get the conversation started, to offer prompts, to get the members going, to share comments and questions from the panel and from the audience, to encourage participation from those who could respond verbally and those who couldn't. You might have noticed in one of the pictures, One of the members was actually holding up her information card and somebody else was gesturing. And then to summarize what the member said if it needed further clarification. I think that the event fits very, very well with the life participation approach to aphasia. It gives the members purpose and participation, independence, and opportunity for peer support. And by the way, there's Avi Golden, self-esteem, self-confidence, and they're advocating for themselves and for others who are living with aphasia. Our audience was very diverse. It wasn't just SLPs or just medical personnel, as you can see from the list here. And you can see some quotes that came in. These are comments that were made on the Facebook page during the event itself. How many people did we reach? So during the test run, which lasted about 25 minutes, we had done no prior advertising or promotion for this. Over 1,100 people were reached. We got over 99 reactions, 30 comments, and 9 shares. The Facebook Live event, which lasted an hour, as you can see, got even that many more. So it's a really wonderful way in a very short time to get the word out about aphasia and from those who are the experts, as we all know. So I thank you. If you have any further questions, I can take them now. And here's our email addresses if you'd like to be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. We have a question from Fabi.
Okay.
Describe a bit more about the nature of the event. Was there a theme?
Okay, so we did not have a specific theme. The members started each by just telling their stories, how they got their aphasia, how many years ago, how long they've been at the center, whatever. And we were interrupted many times during the presentations because we would stop if a comment or a question came in from the audience. So although it was challenging for people with aphasia, they really rose to the occasion, and we pretty much took whatever topics came up at the time.
Terrific. We have a couple of minutes. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to jump in with?
Well, I'm just going to say then, if we have a minute, this is so special for me because I have been doing this magnet project for many, many years, and I know many of your names, and I've emailed with many of you over the years. It's really a pleasure to see you and to meet you this week.
Terrific. Thank you, Robin. There's a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Can we still watch this event on Facebook?
Yes, you can go to our Facebook page, Adler Aphasia Center, and you can see both live events. Yes.
Terrific. And where did the contacts come for the event?
The contacts? What do you mean by contacts?
I'm not sure. This is from Elizabeth Lawrence. Elizabeth, if you want to jump in and clarify, you can. I think how did you market the event?
Okay, so that was promoted beforehand. It was put out on Facebook to watch for the event on this and this date. There were email blasts. It was put out on Instagram. We had an SLP conference shortly before, and so it was announced at that conference as well.
Excellent. And a follow-up question to that, who was invited? Or how did you go about that?
We didn't formally invite, we just made it known to people, and so it was word of mouth. Something went out to the SLPs. Anybody who was on Facebook could see it as well. So we had families, we had people with aphasia, families and caregivers, medical personnel, etc.
Terrific. Was there an opportunity for viewers to donate?
There was not formally an opportunity for viewers to donate, no.
Okay. And I'm going to hold the questions there so that we can keep moving on. Again, you can connect on the discussion forum with Robin and if you have further questions. So we're going to move right along. The next one is the Arch Network. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelique Cawthorn. I am a stroke survivor and a member of the aphasia community. I'm nervous, so just bear with me, guys. As one of the founders of the Arch Network, I'm here to share with you what Arch is all about. ARCH stands for the Aphasia Resource Collaboration Hub. It's a network of clinicians, researchers, university clinics, and support groups in the tri-state area. The aim is to increase awareness of and access to treatment, research, and other support services for people with aphasia. Let me go over how this got started. One afternoon, Dr. Martin, the director of the Temple Lab, in a very casual conversation with me, shared all the aphasia-related resources that are available to me in the Philadelphia area. I was floored. It was a lot. We spoke about how great it would be if there was a place for me to find out about resources that are available for people with aphasia in one spot. It all seemed so disjointed. She agreed, and long story short, ARCH was born. My second slide talks about collaboration. A little bit about how I got here. May 2017, I suffered and survived 2 strokes. Prior to that, I was the finance manager for one of the largest dealerships for cars in the country. Communication loss was a devastating concept. So I went into therapy with vigor and tenacity. I went all in, right? So I had a great SPL. She was phenomenal. And there was a flyer promoting a support group on the pegboard behind her. And I did ask her about it, but she didn't encourage it. She didn't endorse any group, actually. I literally stumbled into that same group 6 months later, which eventually landed me at Temple. Now, my clinician was a smart, gifted, and caring speech pathologist. She did not tell me because she didn't care or because she didn't fully embrace the LPAA model. No, she didn't tell me because she didn't know the source. She didn't know where the flyer came from, guys. There was no collaboration. And this is why ARCH is essential. It fills that void. It's a landing pad for people with aphasia, researchers, clinicians, and group facilitators to share and be made aware of the options and services in the community. Slide 3, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the benefits are absolutely obvious. Imagine if my speech pathologist could have looked on a trusted website, printed up a flyer and handed it to my husband, or simply pointed us to a website where we could learn more about the research, caregiver meetings, and aphasia camps. Now imagine the impact such a small act can have on your patient's journey. I am a proud member of 4 Philadelphia, South Jersey-based aphasia community groups. I have found those groups to be essential to my well-being and social interaction, and I truly, truly don't know where I'd be without my fellow aphasians. But back to the benefits. And again, they are obvious. Benefit 1 is to the researchers. They can research information and breakthroughs and have a place to notify people with aphasia about their research opportunities. Number 2, the clinicians will have a trusted, reliable source to direct their clients to. In addition, they will have the ability to find out about ongoing research in their areas and saving the best for last. The people with aphasia support groups are, number 3, the main benefactors. The choirs, the exercise, and the chat groups can get more members. The people with aphasia can get more friends in a much needed bond that we don't get in any other place. A place to learn and a place to familiarize themselves with the activities and research opportunities that are specific to them. Let me leave you with this. I believe with participation and engagement together, we will be able to create a network that empowers the aphasia community. It will take community participation from all stakeholders. Now, I know you're wondering, you're thinking, I'm watching you, you're thinking, Angie, how can I help? What can I do? How can I learn more? And I'm glad you asked. Shoot us an email to the email address on your screen. Grab your phone. No, seriously, grab your phone. Shoot us an email. Tell them Angie sent you. And I thank you for your time. Again, I am Angie Kosch. Any questions?
Thank you, Angelique. I just want to say there's so much love coming from the audience on this. So you should check that out. Is ARCH intended to be a national or international or local to your own community and maybe a model for other communities?
this is the hope. That would be the hope. It's something, because of what I've found is aphasia is so not well known. Like I always say, if I tell a person I have Parkinson's, they know what to do. They know how to help. They know what my limitations are. I tell them I have aphasia, they want to know if I'm contagious. It's a serious disconnect in how that all works out.
Absolutely. Just a wonderful solution. Someone asked, is it on a website?
It will be. The website is coming. Send us your email. We are literally in the beginning stages. The website is being developed, and we're not going to roll it out until it is absolutely ready, looking crisp and, you know, worthy of my fellow Aphasians. So we want something that's going to definitely be good in that way.
Terrific. There's a request for the email one more time, or the email address one more time. Maybe you could put it in the chat.
Julie will take care of that for me. Julie is amazing.
Thank you. Do you have a grant for this?
No, but if you know, you guys, I don't know anything about that. I'm just Angie. I'm just Angie. I don't know anything about those things. I'm just working to put the pieces together. And Nadine, Dr. Martin is working with me for this. And it was really just a casual conversation, as I stated, to make things happen.
Oh, that's terrific. There's a question about your new word. I like the way that you refer to fellow Aphasians. Did you come up with that name?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I wrote a story for Adler, and Adler is the group. The first group I belonged to was Adler, was this group I stumbled into, and it's been an absolute life changer, because you don't know anyone else with aphasia, and if they have aphasia, they don't know. They know they had a stroke and they can't talk good. Yep. But it has a name, you know. But we're working on it, and it's getting better. And as people get educated, we can make better moves.
Terrific. There's so much out there in the chat about the inspiration that you've been. So really appreciate it. We might have time for one more question. If anyone jumps in, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll move along.
Thank you, Beth.
Well, thank you so much, Angelique. And we are going to move on to Adler's Hospital. Good transition.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Yes, and I'm very honored to be here with you today, and I'm very honored to be following Angie, hard act to follow. Big fan of Angie's from our Haddonfield group, and thank you, Angie, that was wonderful. And I want to invite you all to this week's installment of Adler's Hospital, which is our soap opera that we would like to tell you about today. We feel that this program that we did a few years ago at Adler West Orange was a very creative way to use drama in one of our groups. We know, thanks to the work of Cherney and Goldberg, that the use of drama in the treatment of aphasia can be very effective, and the use of scripts in aphasia therapy, we know also is something that's very useful. So we decided, you may say, why go and use a soap opera paradigm? Well, we thought that the soap opera paradigm would give us a great way to use those overly dramatic scenes and also to incorporate a lot of humor, which, as Dr. Kaplan mentioned earlier, is just so important. We did this program in person in the center. It was not attempted during our virtual programming on Zoom, but we are thinking of doing it in our next semester. So what did we do? How to do it? We wrote scripts, and we wrote scripts really customized to the members that were going to be participating in this group. The scripts were written varied semantic and syntactic levels. Our members were encouraged to use the scripts, but to liberally ad lib, and ad lib they did. Some of them wanted to rehearse for reading practice of the scripts. Some did not want to put time into rehearsing at all. That wasn't their thing. They just wanted to come in that day and go with the flow, and that's what they did. We used a lot of reading aids, highlighting, large fonts, reading guide strips, and we also encouraged a lot of gestural language. We did not spend that much money at all on this program. We used a lot of name tags, hats, wigs, security vests, things we had around. We employed a lot of our volunteers, both our graduate school volunteers and our community member, mostly senior citizen volunteers that are all trained. They used a lot of sound effects on the iPad. And often we would project on the large screen TV a certain picture or topic that we were focusing on that week. Also for our readers, those that were reading the scripts, we would match up one-on-one our volunteers if the member needed someone to help them with reading, but even better was when the members themselves would assist each other in reading the scripts. This was a very member-directed activity. The plot lines, although we would repeat characters from week to week, the plot lines were based on discussions with our members. The characters and the way that they wanted the plot to go each week would be basically, member-directed. Also, we incorporated something else that was interesting. We asked the members to come up with medical topics that they wanted to discuss each week. This gave them a great opportunity to vent, either during their acute care stays or their rehab stays or even outpatient. They had a lot of things they wanted to gripe about in terms of our medical system. And you'll see examples of that later. We feel this was a very inclusive activity in that we had people with Broca's, Wernicke's, and PPA. The group creativity was overflowing in this activity. You see here some examples of topics that our members came up with, both for the general plot of the soap opera and also for the medical topics. So basically, we would act out the scripts about 30 to 40 minutes, and then the balance of the hour would be a discussion of the medical topic that we addressed that day. And as you can see, it really ran the gamut from talking about EpiPens to what happens if the mom doesn't make it into the delivery room when the baby's ready to, be born, medical malpractice, why doesn't anybody answer my call bell? This is an example of a script. You can see based on this example that for people who had higher level reading abilities, they were able to read the Nurse Randy part here. And then for someone who was lower verbal, more severe aphasia, it would be a lot of gesturing. And again, we really encouraged people to ad lib as much as they would like. I want to give a lot of thanks to my dear friend and mentor, Wendy Greenspan, who was at the time the program director in West Orange, to Gretchen Zabo, another dear colleague at the Adler Center, Julie Pate, who was our student extern that semester and helped with a lot of our props, and the people who really made this all happen, the members and volunteers at the Adler Aphasia Center in West Orange. And now I'd like you to take a look at a little trailer that was made by our student for our Oscar night that we had at the end of the semester.
Sharon, should there be sound?
Sharon, we're having
Yes.
trouble with the audio.
You don't hear the sound?
No, if you want to maybe stop the share, and as you're rebooting it, make sure you've got the share sound icon clicked in the share
Okay,
tray.
let me just 1 second. I don't exactly see it right now. Let me try it one more time. 1 second.
Yep.
Let me try to, 1 second. I'm just going to back it up a second, if that's okay.
We've got it.
Any questions? Be happy to take. And this is where to reach me.
Sharon, I've got to say, I've got goosebumps from the trailer. So you definitely did your work. Terrific. There's some really nice comments out there and a couple of questions. Edler has always had so many strengths in theater. Do you think this is something that would work if group leaders have little or no theater experience? And do you have a resource or recommendations for leaders with limited theater experience?
Well, I will tell you that I am a real theater buff, but I have not had any acting training. I've always loved the theater, and it was something that I just felt like I could jump into. So I did not have any drama people around us coaching us. We just kind of went with it. So I think I don't think you need any specific training. It may enhance the program down the road. We may grab somebody who does have that training, but doing it the first time that I did it, I don't feel like you need any training.
Terrific. You can always do a shout out to Jerry Kaplan too. So I'm imagining there's a lot of laughter at these sessions, right?
Hysterical. We would just be on the floor.
Question, who wrote the scripts and were they ready for group, or excuse me, were they ready for each week of group therapy?
I wrote most of the scripts. My student did write the scripts 1 week, but that's physically writing the scripts, taking in the input from the members. And was the other question, were they ready each week? Is that what you said?
Oh, so that they were ready. I goofed it up. So that they were ready for each week. So I'll move on to the next one. How many pages were the scripts typically?
Well, that's interesting. We usually had 3 scenes each week, and each scene would be, I would think, well, it was very large font usually, so it was a lot of pages, but it was usually about, I would say 3 to 4 pages each scene.
Okay, nice. There's some requests to air this weekly and syndicate it, I think. A lot of people are hooked already, so this is terrific. How much time did it take to write the scripts along with the group members?
Well, if you ask Wendy Greenspan how much time it took to write the scripts each week, she will tell you an inordinate amount of time, because she would ask me, Sharon, how long did it take you to write that script? It took a considerable amount of time to write the scripts. I would say at the end of each week, we would get the input from our members, and then we kind of had a general idea of loose plot lines. But it took, I would say, each week, it would take a couple of hours to write each script. So I would say probably about 3 hours.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. This has been fabulous. And again, still patting down those goosebumps. So this has been just another wonderful brag and steel kind of moment here. And we'll have more of those coming up tomorrow as well.